Hi everyone, Sam here, also known as Mr. Stainless 001, and today we're back chatting about Shadow of War. Now today what I want to do is actually kind of really create a different type of video than I have been doing recently with regards to Shadow of War. Usually the types of videos I'll make are very factual, they're based on simply just what the dev team have been saying. Today what I want to do is really just have a little bit of a discussion with you guys. Basically take what the devs have said and then just kind of imagine, have a think, speculate about what we may experience, what we may come up against in the game itself. And what I really want to talk about today is the Undead. But before we get into today's video, if you want to join the community here on the channel, if you want to join the hype around Shadow of War and chat with me about games, feel free to join my Discord server. There is a link to it down in the video description. I'm in there every day, chat with you guys, and there are quite a few Shadow of War fans in there. We're basically all getting pretty excited for the game coming out, and equally crying at the fact that we weren't able to get a copy of the Mithril edition. So feel free to click that link in the video description, come and join us there. But with regards to what I want to talk about today, I want you to know that all of this is just complete speculation. This is just me having a think out loud, basically. Some of it is going to be based on what we know already about the game, and then tying that into equally what we know or what we can find out about the Lord of the Rings universe, what we know about the lore and the canon. But what I really want to discuss with you today is something that Michael the Platter had said in the last IGN first video that kind of got me thinking, got me a little bit excited, and that was whenever he started talking about the Undead and the Necromancer Tribe. Now, from what we know about Shadow of War, there are going to be a number of different tribes that the Wraiths will be a part of. You've got the likes of the Beastmaster, the Trickster, there's also going to be the Pain Tribe, and there are equally going to be a Necromancer Tribe. Now, for those of you who don't know, Necromancers are basically people that you experience always in these fantasy type worlds who almost have a power or command over death. We see it a lot in Warhammer. People who are necromancers in Warhammer are able to reanimate corpses, are able to speak with the dead, and kind of have this this spiritual tap in to death. And they're always a little bit scary and a little bit untrustworthy in most lores and most fantasy worlds as well, because, you know, guys who talk to the dead all the time probably aren't normal, really. So what we know is that Michael the Platter, well, we know already that there was going to be a Necromancer tribe in Shadow of War, and recently with the last kind of Nemesis system video that Michael the Platter was talking about over on IGN, we know that there's going to be these outposts throughout each of the regions. And one of the outposts that we saw in that IGN first video was the Necromancer outpost, and we saw that there was these totems that Michael the Platter said these Wraiths were worshipping, were carrying out rituals to kind of interact, to talk with, to raise the undead in that area. And that kind of got me thinking about the possibility of us as a player, of us as Talion, coming into contact with, I'm not going to say zombies, I'm going to try and not say zombies at all, because that's not what I mean, but coming across undead warriors, or reanimated warriors throughout the game. Now, there is actual factual basis for this whenever we look at the Lord of the Rings lore and the Lord of the Rings canon. Of course, we already know the folks over at Monolith have already taken, obviously, some artistic license with the monsters that we come into contact with. We saw that in Shadow of Mordor, the likes of the Caragors, which are a more feline-like warg is how they're described by the dev team, and equally the ghouls that we came across in Shadow of Mordor as well. They don't actually exist in the Lord of the Rings canon that I'm aware of. So we know that they obviously could take some artistic license. However, there is equally some Lord of the Rings lore basis for having undead warriors in the game. And I want to chat to you about a couple of them. Now, some of these undead forces, undead types, you'll already know about. The most popular one is are the Nazgul and the Ring Wraiths. So the Nazgul and Ring Wraiths, as we know, they were formerly kings of men. 9 rings were gifted to them by Sauron, and that caused them to become these ghost-like wraiths. They can't see properly, they rely on smell and hearing. They use Morgul blades, which are meant to break off from the wound and can turn the person they've stabbed into a wraith. Now, we know that the Nazgul and Ring Wraiths are already in the game. We know that the main antagonist that I would say we're going to be fighting against in the game is the Witch King of Angmar. And when the Witch King of Angmar takes over Minas Morgul, or creates Minas Morgul from the ruins of Minas Ithil, he's going to most likely have the Ring Wraiths as his war chiefs. So we know that we're going to be experiencing them. We know we're going to come across them in the game. Equally, another type of undead we have in the Lord of the Rings lore are Wraiths, which are a byproduct really of the Ring Wraiths. These are people who've come into possession of a Ring of Power and wore it too long, or were stabbed by a Morgul blade. So they're permanently invisible, more or less immortal. We may come across them in the game as well. However, that's not really where I want to go with this. Equally, there's 2 other strange types of undead in the Lord of the Rings lore. You've got Phantasms, which is a fantastic name. It sounds more of one of those there classic circus names, but come and see Mr. Phantasm and his Morgul blade. But these were delusions and or spirits of fallen Maiar, and therefore not truly undead. So Morgoth and Sauron used Phantasms for their treachery, really, in the Lord of the Rings universe, and it's also rumoured to say that Saruman used them as well. We also have Lingerers, which are elves whose bodies have been consumed by their fae. To men, they're indistinguishable from bodiless spirits. Next we have ghosts, and these we've seen in the Lord of the Rings films. The most popular portrayal of ghosts in the kind of Lord of the Rings media is the Army of the Dead, or known as the Dead Men of Dunharrow. These are the souls of the dead who basically betrayed Isildur and were cursed, and they were left to haunt the mountains of Dunharrow until Aragorn persuaded them to fight for him. But the main undead type, really, that I think we're going to come across in the game are Barrow-wights. Now, Barrow-wights are not undead, but evil spirits inhabiting the tombs of the Barrow Downs. Now, they often possess grave gifts, possess bones of people who are buried in the tombs, so it kind of makes them similar to animated skeletons that we would see in the likes of Skyrim. Now, the Barrow Downs are actually an area of low hills located to the east of the Shire and the Old Forest, and kind of west of the village of Bree. So, location-wise, Barrow Downs aren't going to be in Mordor. However, one thing that kind of ties them into this game is the fact that we have these barrows of Celebrimbor. Now, we know that Celebrimbor is going to have these tombs dotted around the Shadow of War map, where we can basically go in and retrieve legendary pieces of gear, legendary pieces of armor, of weaponry that belonged to the kind of champion Uruks that led Celebrimbor's Uruk army in the Bright Lord DLC. And it probably wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that whenever we go into these barrows, there's going to be some form of a challenge, some form of an opponent, whether that is a kind of parkour challenge, whether it's a puzzle, or whether it's going to be perhaps a Barrow-wight that we have to defeat in order to, I guess, retrieve the items that they'll drop. So I think that's one type of undead that we may come across in Shadow of War, but equally, to kind of bring it back to the start and talk about the Necromancer Tribe, I think it would be cool if the next Necromancer Tribe were actually, whenever Michael de Platter says that they're raising the undead in that area, it would be cool if we came across a powerful Necromancer in the game and they raised skeletons from the earth, from ancient battles past, and they kind of emerged in that classic horror sense with rusted weaponry and rusted armor in tow. However, I think what's more likely to happen in Shadow of War is that when we come across a Necromancer, that they'll most likely reanimate fallen Uruks within a certain radius, a certain area of effect. Either way, that is what I think we're going to come up against whenever it comes to the undead in Shadow of War. I think we're definitely going to come across undead or reanimated corpses in some fashion or other in the game, but yeah, I would love to know what you guys think of this. Obviously, some of this is based upon what the devs have said in their streams and said in other videos, but by no means am I saying that any of this is in the game. This is just me as a fan discussing and kind of going off on my own little tangents and sharing those thoughts and tangents with you guys. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think it's possible or likely that we'll come up against undead warriors in Shadow of War? And if so, how do you think we'll come up against them? Let me know. Equally, if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share about the game or any pieces of speculation you would like to share as well, feel free to let me know down in those comments as well. But folks, if this is the first time you've came across my channel, you're very welcome. Feel free to hit the subscribe button. You'll be kept up to date of when new videos go live. But in the meantime, folks, hope you're having a great week, and I'll speak to you soon.